All right, joining us now, back from a very quick 3-miler this morning that he took, is Andy Katz. What does that even mean? First of all, let's start there. What is a 3-miler? Are you a jogger? Are you a biker? Are you on your birth
So I am a
certificate?
runner. Have done Boston, Paris, and New York. I think I'm probably done with fulls, but pre-pandemic, I was up to 25 halves. So I want to get back to that. But I got my second shot on Saturday, so I didn't really feel like running Sunday. It was kind of sluggish. So I just want to get out, cleanse the soul a little, ran by the canal. But here's what I thought of on the run. I ran by the Indiana State Museum, and I thought about you guys going to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, which I've never been to, and I need to carve out time. So I want to propose this to you two, because you've now traveled the state, you're from the state, Mark. The College Basketball Hall of Fame, which is, for whatever reason in Kansas City, no offense to Kansas City, but it has no business being there.
Agreed, Andy.
The Spirit Center is used like twice a year for anything college basketball, for the Big 12 tournament. Okay, so 4 days. And then they have a tournament there for 2 days in November. Mm-hmm. The College Basketball Hall of Fame should be in Indiana.
Yes.
There's so much that comes through Indianapolis that is basketball related that you could get traffic through there. That's what I would like to publicly throw out to this group. I don't know the lease situation, but I think they should move it to Indiana. Your thoughts?
That has my full support. First of all, we got to get you to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, because Tate went for the first time and he said it's better than. I'll let you say it, Tate. Say what you told me.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I went up to Springfield. I think, I can't even remember how old I was, maybe 10, 11 years old. And yeah, it's not as nice as the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. It is not as, captivating, as the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. And as Titus pointed out, you walk through there, you see a guy like Dave Kreider, who used to write the Street and Smith magazine back in the day, one of the original recruiting magazines. And I'm like, oh my God, Dave Kreider's a Hoosier? And there's just so many guys like that. Oscar Robertson, you kind of forget, and the list goes on and on and on.
So the fact that we can have that great of a Hall of Fame in Newcastle, Indiana, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, it speaks volumes. We would be awesome at having a College Basketball Hall of Fame. That has my full support, Andy.
That's a great idea, Andy.
Kansas City makes no sense.
Yeah, I love it. Great idea. Right. We're talking about a basketball game that's going to happen tonight. It is Gonzaga and Baylor. I'm not sure if you're aware. It is for the national championship. I want to start with this question because immediately after Saturday night, Tate and I did a live show, and we didn't have a ton of time to put our thoughts together. It was just like spur of the moment, and I'm an idiot who falls victim to recency bias. So whatever I just saw is always the best thing. But I said in the moment that this, to me, is the most anticipated national championship of my life. It is not. Tate brought up 2005 as like, he said this is the most anticipated since 2005. And I stopped him. I said, I think this is more anticipated than 2005. I think this is the most anticipated in my entire lifetime. Where does it fall? You're older than us, Andy. So your lifetime's a little longer.
Give us some context, Andy.
Where does this one fall for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm also going to put it in the context of the year that we've all had. So the fact that we're getting the two best teams feels gratifying. That, we've sort of earned it because we've all been through, a crap year in various stages. And, that the fact that there was all these upsets in this tournament, and yet these two sort of survived and advanced through an epic semifinal for Gonzaga. Each team had their pause they had to deal with at different points of the season. So they went through COVID, and it ravaged each team. If you remember about Gonzaga, when they had their situation, they were leaving like COVID related people like as breadcrumbs along their trip, because one or two people got it in Florida. They were there. Then they went to here, Indiana, because they played that tournament in Florida. Then a couple of people got it here. They were left. And then the rest of the crew went back to Spokane. And at some point, the Florida people came back, the Indiana people came back, so they were just sort of leaving people along the way. So that wasn't easy either. So in terms of context, yes, I agree with you. I would go back, like 08, it's hard to say because there were 4 number ones, and it was hard to discern like which two. That was the last time we've had 4 number ones. So I would say that one, you know, I mean, it was anticipated in 2012 only because of the freshman aspect of Kentucky with, with Anthony Davis. But I don't know. I mean, this is a hard call. This may be the one. And I've been fortunate to be at, everyone that's happened since 92 when I first started. So I would put it up there. I'd have to really go through the list, but it's got to be in the top 3.
And another interesting wrinkle of this whole game, Andy, and you and I kind of were talking about this offline, is that both these coaches seem to have such a strong affinity for one another. They are great friends. They're also pickleball partners. They like to play pickleball with each other. Scott Drew came out and said that he has been praying for Gonzaga every single game in the tournament. Tonight, he is going to end that prayer streak. Can we just talk? I mean, we've seen Big John Thompson face Dean Smith. They were great friends, but have we ever seen two coaches that are this close going up against each other in the title game? It's insane.
Probably not. Although this is a newer friendship.
Yep.
They're not lifelong friends, but they've become friends over the last couple of years. And then there are members of former either player and assistant from Gonzaga staff who are now on Baylor staff. And so there's that connection, and they also, I think you could argue, different levels of building a program had to build it. I mean, Gonzaga obviously went to that Elite Eight in 99, but even Mark was an assistant on that. And so prior to that, yes, they had John Stockton, but they weren't elite. They weren't even dominant in their conference at the time. So it really was from when Mark took over in 99 or 99, 2000 onward. And then Scott Drew, obviously from 03, was a different kind of rebuild, but what they've done since is pretty remarkable as well.
Well, in your mind then, I think Gonzaga was the team coming. I mean, Gonzaga's been number 1 all season. So it feels like, I mean, they're the favorite tonight too. So it feels like, I guess, the pressure, if such a thing exists, it's not that Baylor doesn't want to win this or whatever, but so I guess I might lean towards Gonzaga, but in your mind, Andy, which one of these teams needs the national title for what is the better story? I guess I'll put it that, I'll frame it that way. What is, when we're talking about the last 20 years or so, 15 to 20 year arc of each program, and tonight is going to cap off just one of the most ridiculous stories, whether it's the Scott Drew rebuild at Baylor, as you said, or Mark Few kind of taking this tiny school in Eastern Washington to this height and finally getting the ultimate prize. Which one to you would be like, looking back in the history books, being like, I cannot believe that 20-year run that led to this national title in 2021?
Well, I mean, Gonzaga is the better story if they go undefeated.
Yeah.
From point A to point B, you could argue Baylor, but at the same time, you just have more at your fingertips at a football school in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So as down as they were still in the Big 12, which you cannot dismiss. The resources that you get at a football-dominated school. So in that sense, I would give the edge to Gonzaga because they literally had none of this. I mean, now, they travel as well, if not better, than any high major. Look at the Pac-12. In normal times, they're flying Southwest all the time up and down the coast because of there's so many. Every school is in a decent airport.
He cannot resist taking shots at the Pac-12. Dude. You see this man? I mean, that's now that UCLA
so
finally
wrong on this because I actually do like the Pac-12. But anyway,
I'm kidding.
No, like think about this. I can't remember who. I think it was in SI.com. They were writing a story about the recruitment of Jalen Suggs and the amount of times that Mark went to see Suggs play pre-pandemic and even play football. Now, that only happens if he has a plane at his disposal. If you are any one of those other schools in that league, you don't have a plane at your disposal to fly to Minnesota, a couple times a month to make sure that you're seeing this potential prospect. It's just cost ineffective for the budget of those schools. But he's got a plane at his disposal for recruiting that can, and you also, that's the other thing too, like a lot of the schools in the SEC, have these planes, but a lot of the planes that they use a lot of the times, are smaller because you don't have to cover as much ground. But when you're going from Spokane to Minnesota or Spokane to Texas for Drew Timme, you can't be going on a little King Air. You need a nice jet, a private jet for the distance. And so, he's got quality aircraft at his disposal as well. And that has helped, those relationships that he has cultivated, because that's a Mark Few thing. These are relationships that he has cultivated with obviously significant donors. And the fact that they can play anybody whenever they want. And also I would say this season, lost in this, and you guys appreciate this because you follow it as well as anyone. This schedule was literally created weeks before. And I really believe that their undefeated season and their number one ranking is in large part, now, of course, they had to win the games, but because of who they played before January, because none of those teams were on the schedule, zero. And they created the Kansas-Auburn thing. They got the Iowa game in South Dakota. They got the Baylor game. I guess technically they were in the Jimmy V, but it was supposed to be Tennessee, okay? And then Tennessee had a positive. So there wasn't a guarantee they were going to play that game. But Mark called Huggins, and Huggins said, yeah, I'll come down. I mean, that literally happened like 3 days before, that they got that game. And all those games adding up, obviously helped them secure a number one ranking.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the season, you're telling on yourself if you talk about Gonzaga's schedule, because they literally cannot do any more than what they did this year. Like, I think that's been Mark's fuse. That's what's so remarkable to me about going undefeated. And people around these parts in Indiana are already scared, but obviously they were scared coming in about the 76 Hoosiers legacy and all that. And they're already poking holes. And by people, I mean my father, who's an Indiana alum and went to Indiana in the 70s. And he's already talking, well, they're not a power conference. So is it the same as the Hoosiers in 76? Is it the same? First of all, who cares? Secondly, they did. It's not like was not a Jim Boeheim non-conference schedule. This was unbelievable. The teams they stepped up and wanted to play.
And by the way, they played that Iowa game literally, I think 48 hours after they came off their pause.
Yeah.
So not to take a shot at Michigan, but I will, in that if you remember, Michigan chose not to play Illinois right after their pause, and then they waited till the weekend to play Wisconsin.
And almost lost.
No, that's the game they won.
Oh, I'm saying they almost lost. That's the one when Howard got teed up in that game, got him fired up, and they come back and win. Yeah.
I'm saying that they chose not to play a game right off a pause because they wanted more practice time. Mark said, you know what? We got this Iowa game. We're going to play it. And they fly to South Dakota and they do it. And the other thing just related to the schedule real quick is that so many of these schools in the other power leagues were basically told, like, don't play teams, out of your region, stay within because of COVID. And actually, one other quick side note related to the tournament, Oral Roberts, they really, even though they didn't win them, they benefited maybe more than any other school like that because they were within the region of, they played them all, Arkansas, Wichita, Oklahoma State. So they played those 4 schools early in the year because they were nearby, because they're in Tulsa. But ultimately, that probably helped them get to what happened with them run to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, when they destroyed Florida, and Florida was embarrassed by Oral Roberts. What a humiliation.
They beat someone else in the first round. I can't remember.
Nope. They beat.
I think it was a bye.
That's all that matters. Also,
by the way, if you're an Indiana offspring alum legend, why didn't you stay in state? Why'd you go to Ohio State?
It's a long story that can basically be boiled down to 2 words: Mike Davis. But we can tell that story on another podcast.
Well, there are other schools in the state of Indiana.
Well, I was an IU guy. I was a Hoosier, and that was that. And but it's.
Why did you call Larry Legend? You scored 1,000 points.
I know you're picking
the Sycamore.
You're picking at some wounds I thought were closed, Andy. I wanted to make the point about Gonzaga's schedule too, that they tried to play Houston and Houston dodged them to play Our Lady of the Lake. So
the best.
I think we got to make a note of that.
Which, by the way, was like the worst replacement ever.
Ever.
Our Lady of the Lake. Are you kidding me?
Speaking of Houston and going into this title game tonight, how much for you, Andy, do the events of Saturday night impact the way you view Monday night? What's going to happen tonight?
Well, on one side, you could say if Gonzaga gets down, they won't get rattled because they've been down. I do worry about, it being a little anticlimactic in terms of fatigue. It is for the title, but you can't duplicate what happened Saturday night for Gonzaga. And so, do they have one more in them?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, it's so funny when you bring up Baylor Houston. There's a part of me that was like, did that happen Saturday night?
Yeah. I know, seriously.
You're so much about the Gonzaga UCLA game,
right?
That I was like, what? There was an undercard? It was like clear JV varsity. And
Thank God, by the way.
Yeah, that it was the first game.
Thank God, by the way, that NCAA had the foresight to make that the first game somehow. Because like if Suggs hits that banking shot and we're all going crazy, and then they're like, now hang tight, we got another game, and then that game ends up being an absolute stinker. We'd all be like, what? I don't know.
I will say this, and I want to say this publicly, that we should have, and I know you guys have probably said, but this has to go down as one of the greatest runs of a team in the last whatever quarter century. And I just think what UCLA did was remarkable. Mick has sort of been undervalued, I feel like, nationally for years, maybe because he's short, and just he was at Cincinnati, Murray, and people were like, he got the UCLA job. There's a lot of people questioning that. And what a run. Johnny Juzang, from Kentucky. I was bugging Rex Chapman about that, because, he was at Kentucky. And I mean, it was just, he couldn't miss. Jaime Jaquez being from the area, and embracing, his ethnicity. And there are very rarely, at least in college basketball, have there been Latin players. And for him to have like such an impact, I think is great, for, hopefully in the future. Tiger Campbell with the crazy hair, and he had such a great run himself. And
Iowa kid,
Smith and Hill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like in general, that UCLA team was so lovable, and it felt like they were the underdogs, the Cinderella lovable team. And then in reality, as you're watching the game, Titus and I are laughing because we're like, Gonzaga has to win a championship, right? They have to get into that echelon to win a championship. And meanwhile, you got the 11-time champs, and we got America pulling for them. Like, come on, UCLA, get over the hump. It's like they've been there before. And I think Bill Walton showed the best example of that, because when Suggs hits a shot, he's at the Westwood One Studios, and he just stands up and gives the beautiful golf clap. A lot of respect there. And I think, if anything, it felt like a Gonzaga team of destiny. My only fear is that, like you said, they're on this emotional high. They think they won the championship, similar to Wisconsin in 2015. And then you show up Monday night and that Duke team is there. And same thing with this Baylor team. And they think that they're the team of destiny. And you hope Gonzaga can match that, and I think they will, because they know what they're going for at the end of the day.
Are you saying that Matthew Meyer is going to be Grayson Allen?
I'm saying that Baylor, if I'm Gonzaga, like I am not celebrating, I'm not on a big high Saturday night, because I know Baylor is going to be a real problem.
They don't seem like a team that would be, though. So I think Gonzaga is pretty even keeled. I mean, celebrate that win. We'll see. One thing I wanted to talk about too, Andy, one thing that's interesting to me throughout this tournament run is that we have these two teams that are led by first team All-Americans and Corey Kispert and Jared Butler. Season kind of not led by their first team All-Americans because Drew Timme has been the best player for Gonzaga this entire NCAA tournament, and Davion Mitchell for Baylor is playing out of his mind to the point that if you just started watching Baylor, you would assume that he's by far their best player. I mean, he has the ball in his hands more often than Jared Butler, it seems. He's out there making plays on both ends of the floor. That is unique. I was racking my brain thinking about that, and I was like I guess that's my question. Like, have you ever is that as insane to you as it is to me that we have two first team All-Americans going up against each other in a national title game, and yet they're not even the best players on their team right now, either one of them?
Yeah, I mean, you could obviously, are you saying, well, the most talented obviously on the floor is Jalen Suggs. That's
sure.
Yeah, I mean, this also feels like, if you remember in 2018, nobody had Dante DiVincenzo as the MOP going into the Final Four as he was coming off the bench. and he ends up winning it. And also, by the way, now he's like a contributor in the NBA. And so that certainly could happen, because Mitchell feels to me like he could have a Marcus Smart like career. You know what I mean? And Marcus Smart came in with more hype than Mitchell did, but at the same time, not a star, but Mr. Everything. Will just get it done. Great effort, energy guy, defend, block, run the floor. I could see him having that kind of career. One other thing, by the way, I hope as we get older and these highlights play, the shot will be shown a million times. I hope the block bounce pass is shown. I know it won't be shown as much, but I hope it's shown quite a bit, because when I talked to Mark yesterday for a convo we did, he said like that's that play epitomizes Jalen Suggs, and I would say that 1,000 times. Like, that was unbelievable to recover on the on the block on Riley, and then to stay in bounds. Well, I mean, out of bounds, inbounds, and then to have the presence of mind, and just the fact as a quarterback, to thread that bounce pass on the run to Drew Timme. I mean, that was a work of art.
And Andy, you mentioned earlier, I mean, Mark Few was flying private to Minneapolis, to Minnesota, to go see Jalen Suggs, all these times. And then, he's the highest rated guy they have come to Gonzaga. When they go to the, Final Four title game in 2017, that kind of got them into that next tier of recruits. And then you invest in a guy like Suggs, you're flying to his football games. And then to see in the Final Four, if you're Mark Few, that same kid make those, 2 game-changing plays, game-winning plays, and then hit the biggest shot in Gonzaga history. I mean, it's almost too poetic, right? To have it all come together and come to fruition.
Well, that's the crazy thing. I mean, imagine, apparently, from what I read, and I asked him this yesterday, and he's, oh yeah, the weather was awful. Like, he's sitting in or standing, I guess, one of the games in typical Minnesota weather was like sleeting, and he's watching him play football. And you're thinking, okay, if I could go back and tell that Mark Few, as I'm watching him, play football, not the sport I'm recruiting him for, that he's going to end up hitting the biggest shot in Gonzaga history and one of the biggest shots in NCAA history, a couple of years later. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah, mind blowing.
Andy, before we let you go, because we know you're a busy man, covering yet another national title. Which, by the way, that's awesome that you're keeping this going. I'm a sucker for guys who are like, I've done this every year since blank, no matter what blank is. So that's I'm excited that in this COVID times you're still going to be in the building, especially for a game as exciting as this. But you've been on our show all year, giving us the tier talk, putting teams into tiers, and we love you for it. And I'm going to ask you, with one game remaining on the schedule, to put the remaining 2 teams in college basketball into tiers for us before you go. I need you to tier Gonzaga and Baylor.
It's a great final question, Titus. Thank you.
Well, I mean, obviously it would be Gonzaga 1, Baylor 2. That's my
okay. All right, that's all I wanted.
But that's tier 1. And if I'm not mistaken, I would assume I had them in tier 1 the whole year, even when Baylor lost a game or 2.
Yep. You did. But did you hear that, Tate? He goes, I have Gonzaga 1 and Baylor 2, but they're both in tier 1.
They're both in tier 1, yes.
Wait, by the way,
1A, 1B.
Are you glad now that they did not play on December 5th?
Yes,
I am. I brought this up to Tate. I think because I had said something halfway through the year about that, and I got killed for it because people are like, why would you not want to see more good basketball? And this, because I had this moment in mind. I think if that game was played, we've seen before the most obvious example is 2016 when Villanova gets smoked by Oklahoma and Hawaii, and then they play again and destroy Oklahoma. That, like, just because you played earlier in the season doesn't mean that's how it's going to go the second time around. But if they had played earlier this year, Gonzaga wins by 15, say, there's not as much anticipation. That's not to say Baylor wouldn't have a chance tonight. It's just like we wouldn't be. The unknown has us titillated, Andy. We're all just at the edge of our seats. Just, we cannot wait. Yeah. Let's should we do predictions?
All right, I will say Gonzaga 85, Baylor 83.
Tate, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll go next. We're going to overtime tonight, and I'm going to take Gonzaga 91-86.
Wow. Okay.
Overtime feels good. Man, I want to pick Baylor. I've ridden with Gonzaga all year. I felt like Gonzaga.
I think Baylor's going to shock the system to open this game. By the way, I think we're going to be sitting watching this game, Titus. We're going to look at each other and go, "Oh my God, Baylor!" And I think Gonzaga is going to fight back. I'm excited. I hope it's a great game.
It has to be close because I don't think either one of these teams is built to roll over. And I think like a Gonzaga blowout, which like I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way, but a Gonzaga blowout feels far more likely to me than a Baylor blowout. But I don't think either one of these teams are going to roll it. Like they don't have that in them. They could be down 20. If they're down 25 at half like Houston, they're finding a way to get back in it.
Yep.
So I don't want to step on Tate's overtime. I'll say, what if you
can say overtime too. That's fine.
I kind of want there to be overtime. I'll say it'll be lower scoring though. I'm going to say like Gonzaga 79, Baylor 75. Put me down for that. Yeah. I'm going to say lower scoring. Like we all think it's going to be a shootout. Maybe guys aren't hitting shots like we want them to.
A little bit of nerve.
Lower scoring. Yeah. 5 minutes left. It starts to get a little more physical. The lockdown defense starts getting played.
Is there a Miley Cyrus concert again tonight?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Andy, enjoy the game. Thank you so much for joining us all season. We got to do stuff in the off season. We got to check in on
I'm around
the off season, make sure you're still doing all right. So
all right.
You're the best. Thanks, Andy. Hey there. Thanks for watching Titus and Tate. For the full friend of the program experience, subscribe right below and come join us for all things college basketball. The action is heating up. Come join Titus and Tate.